hometown security. You know, the recession, understandably, you know, has us reeling and really, really fearful. I mean, you know, I'm sure we can all point to somebody, you know, in our lives, you know, who's been, you know, who's unemployed or who's lost something really badly over these past couple of years. But, you know, I think that there's also something that's been going on that is pretty gosh darn empowering. You know, it's a realization that it is we ourselves who are the keys to our own recovery. That's you and it's me. And it's a really exciting thing because now is the time for all of us in our own communities to act local and think local. Because when we do that, our neighbors, be they next door or in the next county or in the next state or in the next country, will be just fine. And because the sum of the local or locals, that's what creates the global. Hometown security means rebuilding our natural defenses, putting people to work and restoring our natural systems. Hometown security means creating wealth right here at home instead of destroying it overseas. Tackling social and environmental challenges with the same solution yields greater cost savings, wealth generation, and national security. Many great inspiring solutions, you know, have been generated across America. The challenge for us now is to identify and support countless more. Hometown security really is about taking care of your own, but it's not like that old saying, I'm sure everybody's heard it, you know, charity begins at home. It's a little bit different from that. You know, I just recently read this book called Love Leadership by John Hope Bryant, and it's all about leading, you know, in a world that seems to be ruled by fear. And, you know, reading that book really made me re-examine that phrase, you know, in particular. You know, my dad, I was just talking to you, Elizabeth, about it a little bit earlier. It's like, I loved my dad. You know, he was this really incredible guy. He would have been 103 this year, believe it or not. And he was born and raised in Georgia, and actually left Georgia, you know, for fear of lynching and a whole bunch of other things, and came up north, during some really, really hard times, and, you know, came to the South Bronx, and when times got even harder, but through it all, really provided a really stable family, you know, for me, my siblings, and actually a whole bunch of other people who also fell on some pretty hard times. But like every single last one of us, you know, he had, you know, some of his own problems, and you know, his was gambling, you know, sort of compulsively, actually. And to him, that phrase, charity begins at home, was kind of like, you know, in his mind, it was like, oh, somebody's got a payday, and, you know, today's my lucky day, so I'm going to borrow some money and, you know, hopefully pay him back, with interest, of course. And, you know, it wasn't, and sometimes, you know, even, you know, I'd loan him some of my after school or, you know, or a summer job, you know, money, and I swear he was just like, I'm going to hit it big today, Majora, I promise. And, you know, it wasn't totally bad. I mean, my father did actually play the ponies in late 1947, and he won $15,000 and bought the house that I grew up in. So, you know, he did hit it big occasionally. And so, but for the most part, he really didn't. And I remember, you know, being younger, you know, and feeling that, you know, he was my dad. So, and I did owe him, and not quite realizing that it was an addiction. But I'm a grown woman now, and I think my father would actually be kind of proud of me. And so, but it really made me rethink about what charity means, because I think in a lot of people's minds, charity really is about giving because you're obligated to do so, or because you've always done it, or it's even better when it hurts. And to me, you know, I'm about providing the means to build something with an investment that'll grow and intensify that original investment. And it's not just about, you know, giving, that something is going to require more giving next year. It's not about feeding a habit. at all. I spent some years watching, how many good intentions for community empowerment left those that were supposed to be empowered in the same position they were in before, and sometimes even worse. Over the past 20-some years or so, there have been record level spending, in philanthropic giving. And yet, the social problems that we're dealing with, whether it's educational outcomes or income disparity, incarceration, obesity, diabetes, all of these things, have gotten worse over these years. And I have to say, I know a little bit, about many of these issues myself, because I was actually part of the nonprofit industrial complex for many years. And, I'm a recovering executive director. 2 years clean, actually. But during that time, I focused on some pretty good project-based solutions to local problems. And I founded and ran a very interesting, nonprofit called Sustainable South Bronx, and I like to think of it as a research and development laboratory that really had some pretty successful programs. But, it's interesting that even though there were some great things that we did, I actually struggled, for financial support, especially later on. The greater our success came, and the greater our success, the less funding that we were able to get. And I have to say, like, being one of the first, TED conference talks released online, and being seen by millions of people, and winning a MacArthur in the same year, you would think that would, help. It actually didn't. And because the impression was that I totally arrived. And so all of this innovative work was kind of not really being supported to the extent that I wish it had. But by the time, I'd moved on, I was actually, interestingly enough, covering a good portion of our fees through speaking engagements, which I thought was kind of fascinating. And I think mostly it was just that we were a little bit ahead of our time. But I think that, what we learned as far as doing the kind of social innovation that actually pays our society back, that's the kind of thing that we need to be thinking about more of. But I'm really proud to say that, that the work that we did at Sustainable South Bronx was really important. We started one of the country's very first green-collar job training and placement systems, and, and I'm so happy to say that the model has actually been adopted all over the country. And, it's really, and linking poverty alleviation with environmental remediation was a way to show different parts of the country that this is something that is a really powerful